It all started when Olivia, my sister-in-law, confessed that she no longer found her husband so attractive. It was a night of drinks, one of those that we used to have since the first summers when I met my current wife, where she opened up to Amelia, her sister, and me. That comment seemed innocent, but I knew it was loaded with something else.
"You're very lucky to have Rain, Amelia," she said to my wife when the music had slowed down a bit. "I know," Amelia replied. "He is the best man in the world." "Yeah, he is intelligent, handsome, and also has a great sense of humor. I bet he does everything right." Amelia laughed at her comment, high-fiving her sister as I shifted uncomfortably in place. I felt like a piece of meat whose benefits were listed, only to be sold to the highest bidder. But things wouldn't end there.
"It's incredible," my wife agreed. "It's a shame there aren't more like him in the world." "It's very sad," my sister-in-law said immediately. At that moment, her eyes met mine, causing a rush to run through my entire body. Her look was reckless, as if she didn't want to hide the fact that she was undressing with her look. "You should do the world a favor and lend it, so we can all have a little of theirs." Amelia laughed outrageously, but Olivia just stared at me. At that moment, I knew that for her this had not been a joke, but a formal request to my wife. I didn't know if it was because of the alcohol, or if I had always felt that way, but I couldn't stop thinking that my sister-in-law was suggesting that I do with her what I had in store for the woman of my life. There was my discomfort again, but mixed with something else. I swallowed thickly, hoping the pair of drunk women would stop having me as their main topic of conversation. "Someday I will," Amelia said, "when I stop being so jealous." And she laughed again, with that scandalous laugh that characterized her, but on that occasion had not made me even the slightest smile. I knew her joking tone very well, so on her side it was nothing more than a game between her and her sister. But when she turned to look at Olivia, I saw nothing more than a woman who had been presented with the greatest challenge of her lives before her eyes. I was tense for the next few months waiting for my sister-in-law's attack, but nothing happened. So, after several weeks of ignoring family invitations and avoiding being at the meetings that Amelia had with Olivia, I decided to relax. Who would have thought that just when I had let my guard down, things would get complicated between her and me? It was one afternoon, when autumn was beginning to wither the leaves on the trees, that the doorbell rang insistently at my house. It was the weekend, and I was alone, since Amelia had gone on a trip with her friends to a nearby beach where they had rented a cabin, and I had taken that opportunity to start a new hobby. I had prepared to forget about the workweek painting with watercolors in the living room of our home, so that doorbell took me by surprise. However, that was no worse than the moment my eyes fell on the person standing at the door of my house. "Olivia? What are you doing here?" I asked, even though I knew that it sounded a bit rude, and it wasn't my position to ask something like that. After all, the house was still both Amelia's and mine, so her family was more than welcome to be here. Still, Olivia's face made me realize that there was a plan behind her appearance. I didn't remember that she had come to our house alone, since previously her parents, or her husband, accompanied her, so she must have something to do there. And whatever it was, it couldn't be good. "Can I come in?" she counter-asked, moving me aside. "Amelia's not here," I said. "I know," she answered with the same speed and tone. She entered the house and quickly sat down on the furniture, crossing her legs without taking her eyes off me. I knew she was up to something by the way she seemed to smile maliciously at me, like she was enjoying my confusion. "So, can I help you with something?" It was my turn to ask. "Nothing," she replied. "Just tell me which room I should use for these days." I was stunned by her words, without understanding what she meant. Why would I have to tell you which room you would stay in? Did she perhaps have plans to use our house? Why hadn't my wife told me anything about this? All those questions were mixed in my head, one that was beginning to hurt because of the situation. "What?" she asked. "Isn't it normal for one sister to help the other?" That's how she ended up telling me that her husband had kicked her out of the house without warning, even without letting her take her belongings. I didn't want to investigate the reason for her husband's action, since it wasn't my place to ask those types of questions, but I knew there was something she hadn't told yet. In fact, I thought it was a joke, but after writing to Amelia and seeing the message from my wife assuring me that Olivia would stay with me that weekend, I knew it was all more real than anything else. As sisters, we share things, you know, she said, approaching me. It would be unfair for her to get everything for herself, without letting me use her things. As I told you before, anyone would think that her words were innocent if it weren't for the way I looked. That feeling of being watched as if I were a smart piece of meat appeared again. But this time, being alone without Amelia, I felt somewhat vulnerable. However, I couldn't deny that my sister-in-law's expressions did things to my body that I wasn't proud of. These reactions did not go unnoticed by her, who smiled as if she were a schoolgirl meeting her platonic love. That was when, after almost 6 years of knowing her, I detailed her well for the first time. Olivia was dark, tall, thin but athletic, with a body that any woman could envy. She had tough features that made her look imposing, but she could be the most innocent in the world if she wanted to. When I met her, she used to wear short, tight-fitting clothes, but that changed when she met Mal, her husband, who didn't like his wife showing off her attributes for everyone. However, when they began the separation process, Olivia returned to wearing the same clothes as when she was single, and that had been something Amelia was glad about. How did I explain to my wife that something she was happy about was putting me in an uncomfortable and compromising situation with her dear sister? That was why that night I went to sleep immediately after a cold shower. I had indicated that she could use guest room number 1, the one furthest from our master bedroom, to avoid the temptation of thinking about how close we both were. However, I have to be honest and tell you that it didn't work. Throughout the night I could do nothing but toss and turn, feeling my muscles tense with the need to go out and see the woman who was under my same roof, even though I had escaped from her several months ago. Furthermore, no matter what happened, it was quite creepy of me to go see my sister-in-law in such a vulnerable state, so I mentally scolded myself. Nothing made sense in my head, so I needed to stop. I knew nothing was better than taking a pill that would make my brain calm down to the point of falling asleep, so I didn't waste any time and headed to the kitchen for water. And that's when I saw her. Sitting in the kitchen, drinking something from my cup of coffee, while wearing the shortest pajamas I had ever seen. She was surprised, but then composed herself, noticing how a winning smile settled on her lips. She hadn't planned this meeting, but she knew from her expression that things had turned out better than she had in her head. At that moment, I felt trapped. It was as if the prey had entered the hunter's home of its own free will, where it knew there would be no escape. "Can't you sleep?" Olivia said, her voice whispering as if she didn't want anyone but me to hear it. I nodded without saying anything. In any case, I felt like no words could come out of my mouth, as if my tongue had literally been eaten by mice. I ignored everything, trying to find the bottle with the sleeping pill, although I didn't really have much success. "Do you need a sleeping pill?" she asked again, her voice lower than it had been before. "Yes," I said, clearing my throat. "I have a pill in my room," she replied. My entire body stopped at the comment of my sister-in-law, whose voice had no longer been so timid, but full of a promise that did not escape me. It was like that comment several months ago where she suggested that my wife should lend me to everyone, and to be honest, it didn't escape my body either. "I see you need it a lot," Olivia continued. "Otherwise, I don't understand how you're going to get that down." Stunned was an understatement for what I was. However, it continued to grow with every word that came out of Olivia's mouth, something that made my brain go foggy. What should I do? How could I ignore what I felt? Would it be okay to let myself go and give her what she wanted so she could leave me alone? All that invaded me every second. I knew that if my sister-in-law didn't get what she was looking for in me, she would continue to torture me, and perhaps make my relationship with Amelia suffer the consequences of her failed attempts. I couldn't allow so many years of love to end because of her, so I sighed, deciding to fulfill Olivia's whim. Anyway, my wife had instructed me that I should take care of her sister in any way I could, and if this was the best way to do it, who was I to refuse? "Then take the medicine to my room," I said, making us both disappear into the master bedroom. That weekend, my sister-in-law did whatever she wanted with me. There were 3 days in which I did nothing but please her, at the same time that I felt like I knew another perspective on intimacy. I still loved my wife, but I couldn't deny that Olivia had given me moments that I had never shared with her, and even fulfilled one or another fantasy. I'd like to say things ended with that weekend, but my sister-in-law's whim turned into something stronger. We couldn't be away from each other anymore. but she respected the fact that it couldn't be forever since my priority was Amelia. I lived a double life with two sisters, and I know it's not something I should be proud of, but they both make me happy in different ways, and I fill roles in their lives that they can't find in anyone else. Let me know in the comments if you liked my story. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.